Good evening. Welcome to our regular council meeting. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're holding this on the traditional territories of the Klamath Nation. I'm going to start the meeting with announcements. I'll start with Councillor Almeida and we'll work around.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mayor. Let's see what I can remember off the top of my head. We got a busy month of events and shows and performances going on. So starting this weekend, Piano Heist is happening at the Max Cameron Theater, Friday the 2nd and the 3rd at, I believe, 7 o'clock. Tickets are still available, $30 each at the Peak. You better get them tomorrow, as the Peak's not, or you probably can get them at the door. Banff International Film Festival is next weekend, the 9th and 10th, also at the Max. Tickets also available at the Peak. I believe it might be the only spot left because I think other locations are sold out. Tickets are $25 there. And also at the end of the week, and the month, I should say, February 23rd and 24th, Laszlo Tomasic Dance Academy has their fundraising performance going on the 23rd and 24th. Tickets also $25. All those events are cash only, and all the tickets, cash only for the tickets, which are all available at the Peak.
No, nothing for me, Your Worship.
Southcott.
Nothing for me either, Your Worship. Thank you.
Really?
Sorry. Thank you, Chair, or Your Worship. I know that there's a Cathette Rent Bank community conversation coming up at the library on February 6th from 12:30 to 1:30. So I think that's some folks from out of town coming that do that on the island and are going to be part of that conversation. And people who are interested in that conversation can do that. We have there's also our mixed bonspiel at the Curling Club coming up on starting February 9th, 10th, and 11th. And at the library on Saturday, February 10th, there is a Who is Israel Wood Powell info session being put on by our local university at the public library. Thank you.
Palm.
Nothing to report, Your Worship. Thank you.
Great. We'll move now to the adoption of the agenda.
Moved.
Favor.
Aye.
Oh. Great. Wondered what that voice was.
Sorry, Mayor Wasno. For some reason, it says that I don't have a camera, even though I do. So my video feed's not showing it. But I'm here.
All right. We'll move now to the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meetings held January 18th and January the 10th. Out.
So moved.
Seconded. All in favor? That's unanimously. Now move to item 6, which is committee reports, and I'll ask Councillor Elliott, who chaired the committee of the whole meeting on January 16th, to provide comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had some discussions that evening. Well, we had some correspondence from the Cathette Regional District about our social planner. We talked about the draft strategic priorities and decided to send them to the draft to the February 15th council meeting, and we decided to have a workshop, which happened on Tuesday. We talked about the Franklin Alberta Avenue housing agreement bylaw, and I believe we'll be handling that this evening on our agenda. We had some engagement reports by all of the councillors. They talked about their stuff over the holidays. We received a notice of motion that went to the following Thursday meeting, and we adjourned at 6:41.
We'll now move to item 8, which is other reports and the report from municipal directors. And we'll start with Councillor Doudt.
Thank you. So we're having an exciting time continuing at the regional board. We had a board meeting on January 24th, which was there. I'd just like to go through the interesting items that are on there. Won't touch on everything. But the first one was had a motion for the board to request staff examine draft 2 of the 2024 to 28 financial plan with an attempt to find cost savings that will reduce the overall budget. And that's going to be a topic of discussion next week at an unusual Tuesday meeting of the Finance Committee on February 6th. Well, it should be interesting. Now, we had a report on the annual Affordable Housing MRDT plan to access municipal and regional district tax funds. And that is Powell River Education Services is getting a grant of those affordable housing funds from Sunshine Coast Tourism and putting them towards some nest housing for workers. It's $150,000 approximately going into a project which is actually going to create affordable housing for workers. So it's nice to see that MRDT tax money, which goes from hotel rooms and bed and breakfasts and Airbnbs to Sunshine Coast Tourism, who distributes that money to the regional district, who then moves it on to press, who puts it into action on behalf of the taxpayers. So that's good news and some action happening there. The QRD had an update of its housing needs assessment. So the whole regional district, including the city, had a housing needs assessment a few years ago before this last census. And this is an update. It actually works with some of the new provincial housing legislation to have that updated. So we've got fresh updated numbers on the housing needs in the regional district. And you can find that in detail on the website if you want to go to there and look at it. The board is looking also at its grant in aid funding and grant in aid local areas grants. And that's of particular interest to the city, as the regional district has 3 funding streams. One is the general grants in aid, and the general grants in aid are financed in part by the city. The electoral area grants in aid are not, and the social development grants in aid are not contributed by the city. But the social development grants in aid are being looked at by the regional district to see if they should be rolled in to the general grants in aid. So pay attention to that one. I will be, and I'm sure Councillor Elliott is as well, to see what comes of that. The board set aside $29,200 in the social planning service for social planning initiatives related to wages. And that is wages that the regional district pays to a regional district employee. And another interesting feature was Director Gisborne from Area B had found an old table that had a 10-year summary of all of the taxes and tax rate changes going back 10 years from about 2013, and had a motion to update that to the present time so we could have a long-term look at where taxes have gone for the regional district as a whole, for the city, for each electoral area, and in quite detail. So I'm looking forward to getting that from staff. And the last item on that agenda was the fourth quarter 2023 strategic plan progress report, which we will be taking to a public meeting in February. And then we had the inaugural regional hospital board minutes for the year 2024. First item was election of the chair, and I was re-elected as chair of that board for the ensuing term. We got correspondence from Emily White, Treaty Implementation and Intergovernmental Relations Coordinator for the Tla'amin Nation RE, an update on the requested name change for the Regional Hospital District. The Regional Hospital District made a motion to change the name to the Cathett Regional Hospital District way back in 2022. It's been forwarded off to the Minister of Health. There's been a few updates asked for by the regional district in the meantime, and the latest news is that we have heard that the Minister of Health is looking at writing an order of council for that name change, and will get back to us when that happens. So the board wrote a letter back to the Tla'amin First Nations with a copy to the Minister of Health, so they know we'd like to see that go ahead. And finally, we're at Regional Hospital District Budget Draft 2 again. If those who are paying really close attention to their tax notices will notice there's a Regional Hospital District tax line on their tax assessment when they get it. We're talking about that. There's a discussion that the board wants to have about putting funds into reserve each year so that when the Vancouver Coastal Health asks for contributions to their projects, that we won't have to actually collect all that money in taxes in one particular year. Hopefully we could build up a reserve. That's going to take a little bit of discussion to figure out whether we're going to do it and what the right amount is. And if you want to see that discussion take place, that'll be happening at a special Regional Hospital District Board meeting on the 20th of February. That's what I've got to say about those few meetings, and perhaps Councillor Elliott has some more things that she'd like to add. Maybe not.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think there was a Risen report, which I couldn't pull up and I don't happen to have, but it is on the record for that meeting. If you look at the minutes, it'll have the Rising report for that meeting. Also, the Finance Committee meeting that was scheduled for next Tuesday, I've asked my alternate, Councillor Isaacson, to attend on my behalf because it was not in my schedule and I had a fully booked day that day. So Councillor Isaacson will be representing us at that Finance Committee meeting instead of myself. So that's my report.
Thank you. We'll now move to item number 9, which is bylaws. And the first one is the draft bylaw 2739, which is a housing agreement. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Gies, the developer who's sitting in the audience today. There is a recommendation that the City of Powell River Housing Agreement bylaw 2739, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time. Do we have a motion? Yes. Councillor Elliott.
I can make that motion for you, Mayor. I'll read it from here. I move that City of, oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, I got to get on the right number here. It's the housing one, right? So I move that City of Powell River Housing Agreement Bylaw 2739 2024 be read a first, second, and third time.
Councillor Almeida, discussion? The Dote.
Yeah, I'm curious, Mr. Mayor. I see we've got a report, a draft bylaw 2739 report from staff, and it has 2 options in the report. We haven't discussed and chosen an option yet. The option is different than, option 1 is different than the option we adopted at a previous meeting. And I'm curious, haven't read the bylaw in detail. I want to make sure I know which option in this report the bylaw is written to cover.
Through the chair, I'll pass on to Director Gao to answer.
Through the chair to Councillor Doubt, there was 2 options in the report, a recommended option from staff and an alternate option at the last committee of the whole meeting. It is my understanding that the committee moved or directed staff to bring this second motion forward to this meeting for consideration. So the alternate option is in relationship to reading bylaw 2739 a first through third time tonight.
Which one is in the bylaw?
Through the chair, the bylaw simply just represents, the bylaw speaks to the housing agreement that is attached. So the schedule, there is no recommendation in the bylaw. It's just the bylaw that is there in case council wanted to move the alternate option.
So I'll ask the question again, and I'll ask it in a different way, maybe a more direct way. How many affordable units are there going to be, of what type?
Through the chair, thank you for clarifying. The agreement that is before you that's tied to draft bylaw 2739 is for 3 micro units and 3 one-bedroom units for a term of 15 years.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't clear on what it might be.
Further discussion? Councillor Palm.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the chair. When this was discussed the first time, I didn't have a lot of comments because when the public meeting was held some time ago, there were a lot of our residents that were in the chamber expressing their concerns about the height of the building, which with my bleeding heart, I kind of feel sympathetic since they are probably $1 million homes above the proposed building with a beautiful view. This height of this building is a little bit higher than what we're used to in our community and will probably stick out like a sore thumb for a while for the foreseeable future. So I had a little trouble supporting the 6 stories. I was trying to go for 5. I asked the proponent who is in the gallery tonight to come forward and see if he had an appetite for that, which he said was probably not an affordable option. But when I read your report, Mr. Gao, I want to just say I appreciate the detail of your report. I appreciate the numbers you presented. And there was one number that really resonated with me in terms of the option number 1. And that is that with the proposed option on the table here of 3 micro and 3 one-bedroom units, the pretty well square footage which was recommended by staff, which was 15% of the overall structure for this affordable housing, is reduced to less than 10 and comes in at 9 point something. Am I correct when I present those numbers?
Through the chair to Councillor Palm, those numbers are correct from the report. I might word it a little differently, but those numbers are correct, yes.
Yeah, so staff did a very lengthy report and it was well written. They are advocating for 2 micro units, 2 one-bedroom units, and 2 two-bedroom units for not the 15-year duration, but for 25. In Vancouver, they make these affordable units in perpetuity or whatever the word may be, long-term. So this is meant in their report to be a compromise for 25 years. So I'm not really happy that we're just going to raise our hand and say, yeah, we're going to give the developer everything he's asking for. When staff has been asking for something else and we're going above height limits and all the rest, I have some concerns. So I would advocate for supporting option 1. And I won't be voting in favor of the option that is on the table currently, Your Worship. Thank you. Even though in the past, I will reference, I have never turned down a development option that's been on this table previously.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also thought about this quite a lot since 2 weeks ago when we discussed it. And one of the things that came up in my thinking was questioning how flexible design of the units were. I think in my thinking, I was assuming that a 2-bedroom unit would be a fixed square footage floor area. as would be a one-bedroom, as would be a studio or the micro units, as they're called. Our housing plan very clearly states that 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units are more required or more needed in our community than micro or studio type units. And so I was thinking of moving the original recommendation in this instead of the alternative recommendation as well, thinking that it is likely that the developer could use the miracles of AutoCAD these days and create 2-bedroom units that would still be acceptable, but would fit within a overall scheme that would still make it financially viable. After thinking about it for a while, I decided, and a little bit of conversation, I decided perhaps not to go that route, but I'm still entertaining this, and I would love to see our community receive what is clearly defined as what we need, and that is 2-bedroom units. So I'm not exactly on the fence, but this implicitly in what my thinking is a question: is that conceivable? And is there still possible room for compromise? The 25 years that our planning department was looking for versus 15 years, well, clearly there's a financial difference there. But is there any room to flex as far as the actual design, floor design of the intended development to perhaps give us what planning originally wanted as far as the types of units, square footage wise? So it's a question, really.
Thank you. I'm going to comment because we had extensive conversations on the development. And to put it in a context, as part of the Marine Corridor study, we've heard from an experienced consultant that the economics just are not there to develop at this time in Powell River. And so in light of the fact that we have a developer that has come to the table to put in front of us the opportunity to create housing, which we all know is dearly needed in Powell River, I think at this point that I'm strong supporting what we agreed to at our previous meeting, and that would be the alternate to put forward at this time. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wosno. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I know both the height variance decision that came back to us a while back, as well as the decision to send alternative to council were both hard decisions for me, and I go back and forth on a daily basis. For me, the extra 2 floors and permitting the variance for that, for me, is only worthwhile if there are affordable units attached. And there are in this case, but my concern is they're not sufficient. And I realize that for this council, one of the major decisions that we weigh is the risk. If we support this and move this bylaw forward, we won't be able to, if we keep making agreements like this, be able to meet our housing needs. But if we don't approve it, then it might not get built at all and we don't have any more housing. And so I appreciate that risk, and I would understand why people would vote in both paths. But I think on this one tonight, I'm going to not support this motion. I'm in line with Councillor Palm. This for me is a broader concern, and making sure that developers have clarity when they enter in the development process as to what the development cost charges or community amenity contributions will be. And so I have sympathy for the developer in this case and not having that certainty from the outset and feeling bumps along the way in having to get this approved by council. But at this point, I am going to, I'm open to hearing from other councillors, but I've done a lot of thinking, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to support the motion on the table tonight. But if it passes, it's not the end of the world for me either.
So Eileen.
Thank you, Your Worship. So our community can't set up an environment where people are not willing to start down the road of making plans for housing. We need developers to have enough security in our process that they're not going to refuse to spend money on the development process because the uncertainty is too high. I think we need affordable housing, and the developer in this case has come forward in good faith and offered everything that he believes this project would support financially. He's let us know that to do anything else makes the project unviable. And I'm going to vote in favor of this motion for two reasons. One, that we need the housing in our community. And number two, if we want to have a process that lands us in a better position when we're dealing with market housing as far as contributions on the affordable housing front, we need some clear policy up front so people can predict what that is, so they can determine whether they want to enter in this process or not at the front end. That's a much more fair way to do what we're trying to do here. And so I want to, thank the developer for coming forward, and I want to thank him for putting everything he can into the affordable housing. And when he says he has no more room, I'm going to believe him, and I'm going to say thank you very much and a vote for this particular project to go ahead.
Councillor Doubt. Oh, sorry, Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I have a small question for staff. With the discussion that's happened so far, I definitely shared some feelings similar to Councillor Isaacson and Councillor Palm. So I'm curious, I guess, since option one or alternate option one was approved at the committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, does that mean we can only pass the bylaw with option one, or is there flexibility to amend or adjust the bylaw and still read it 1, 2, and 3 times?
Nope.
Through the chair to Councillor Almeida, I'll speak to the bylaw because I think there is some confusion around that. The bylaw that you have on your agenda tonight was written for alternative option one, recognizing that you as a council may wish to take that option. There was not a bylaw produced for an option that staff recommended, if that makes sense. And so the question as it relates to the motion that was made at a committee of the whole, I think I would defer to my colleagues, Deputy Corporate Officer.
Through the chair, so you can request an amendment. You can read it a first time would be the recommendation with, so read a first time as amended and state what your amendment would be, and then we could bring it back for a second and or third reading with that amendment in there, and then for adoption.
And a follow up then, is that the only reference that I'm seeing in the written bylaw is as attached to a Schedule 1. So that's the reference to Schedule 1, I presume, is where alternate option 1 is. Okay, so then the motion would be then to amend Schedule 1 if we were to pursue that?
Sorry, again, through the chair, I do think there's more confusion. The bylaw that was presented at Committee of the Whole includes the offer made by VEROM. So you haven't read that bylaw at this point. You merely made a motion to bring the the report from staff forward to this council meeting. As far as I'm concerned, and again, my colleagues may correct me, you're simply considering the recommendations from staff. You still have a recommended option from staff, and you also have an alternative option as part of the report.
Okay, I think this goes back to Councillor Doubt's original confusion because it didn't specify what in the bylaw it says. So I think before any of us vote, we just want that clarity, I imagine. And I believe, sorry to Councillor Palm, I think you mentioned option 1, but I think in reality you were referring to the staff option as recommended.
Is option 1 original?
It's not listed as option 1, that's why. So.
Can we get clarification, please, from the Deputy Corporate Officer?
I might be able to help.
So yeah, from what I think, so the bylaw, where there's a motion on the floor right now to read it a first, second, and third time, does include the 3 micro units and the 3 one-bedrooms. That's what the bylaw includes. I was confused as well.
Okay. So Councillor Doubt.
I apologize for my momentary confusion at the beginning. I just wanted to make sure I knew that what we were doing. And I thought that what we should be doing is reading a bylaw that reflects the decision that council made in the majority at our last meeting. We made a decision to go with the original offer that the proponent of the building had made, as opposed to an alternative that was proposed by staff. I voted for that for a reason, because I thought it was appropriate. I voted for it because we need rental housing. We need more affordable housing than we have. Any affordable housing is more than we have right now. Rental housing is something we need. It's appropriate. We have a developer that's willing to build it. Not just build it, but build more than that. They're currently building a lot more than that, and this is going to be additional housing that we need. We have a developer that's willing to do it. If we want to specify, I'll go on, if we want to specify how many buildings or how many suites and what size of a building with how many rooms there have to be, we should write a clear bylaw, in my opinion, that says that. So if someone is coming to town from out of town, or if they're even in town, they can pick up a piece of paper and they could say, if I'm going to build a 44-unit housing development with 6 stories high, then I need to have this many affordable housing units in it. Then when their architect is doing the square foot designs and when they're costing the project, they can do that. And then at the first step, they will know whether it's affordable or not. But when we do it this way, a person comes and they can kind of have an idea of what they think is affordable. And then they go to a council meeting and the council says, well, maybe we need a little bit more. Well, maybe it's still affordable or maybe it's not. Then they go to the next council meeting and they say, well, I think we need a little bit more. We thought about that some more over the weekend and we think we'd like to ask you for a little bit more. I think we need, if we're going to expect people to build a certain number of units with a certain number of bedrooms, we need to have a bylaw that says that. So that's why I'm voting in favor of this bylaw the way it is, now that I understand what it says. And I am not willing to accept the risk that if we put too many hurdles in the way, it won't be built.
Thank you, Councillor Palm.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the chair. So I just want to clarify for myself and the rest of council, hopefully everybody in the room, when this was first presented at Committee of the Whole, it came as a staff report, or we were at that time in negotiation with the proponent, I believe, and staff came a report recommending the 2, 2, and 2 options. Square footage of 15%. From where it got changed, I think the proponent wanted, 3 micro, 3 one-bedroom for 9 point some odd square footage coverage. So that was presented to us at the Committee of the Whole. That's what was voted on at Committee of the Whole. It passed to bring the 3 and 3 option forward tonight. However, we have a motion on the floor, I believe right now, supporting that option of 3 and 3. So from a procedural point of view, we should vote on that option. And if it's defeated, then we can go back to option 1 and see how that goes. I believe that's where we're at.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I read the report a number of times. I also read the bylaw. So it's pretty clear in my mind that as it's explained in the report, there's an awful lot of negotiation that's required here because of the lack of legislation and bylaws, the lacks in them to make this process prescriptive as it relates to the details of this particular situation, which is one that we haven't run into before in this community. So I really need an answer to my question before I can vote on the question that is before us right now. And that is there, of course, I also realized that if I was to ask staff, I'd get one answer, and if I ask the developer, I'm going to get another answer. So that don't agree with each other. I'm pretty sure of that. So that puts me in a bit of a dilemma. But here's the question, which I hope there's an answer for, and that is it possible to make 2-bedroom units small enough to still make the development as the proposed development feasible financially from the developer's standpoint? Now, has that question been considered, like squeezing down the size of 2-bedroom units so that we get the 2, 2, and 2 instead of the 3 and 3, and perhaps the 15-year to make it financially feasible? Is that a question that can be answered? I mean, I'm asking staff that question.
Through the chair to Councillor Southcott, I do think that that's a question for the developer. In this stage, the developer has the ability to modify the layouts and has done so to meet the needs of their financial requirements. It's not a question for staff to be able to answer.
Great. Just going to endorse what Councillor Dowd said. I do not want to be sitting here in 6 months and a year and 18 months hearing again the need for this type of housing. I think we've been around this issue a number of times, and I firmly think that in order to meet some of our housing needs, we should continue and do what we did at the last discussion of this and approve the bylaw. So if I see no others, I'm going to call the vote on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, it passes 4-3. We'll now move to new business. Item 11.
Question, Your Worship. You said it was 4-3, and then I heard Councillor Southcott make a comment. I think the majority was in favor of the bylaw.
Great. Okay. New business, item 11. We have the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities resolutions. Councillors Isaacson and then Councillor Dowd. Who would like to speak to?
Yeah, I can start, Mayor Wosno. So I was having a conversation with the chair of the Comox Valley Regional District, also a councillor for the city of Courtenay, and talking about a number of things. And he mentioned a couple of motions that they were perhaps working on across all municipalities in the Comox Valley related to housing authorities and emergency weather response shelter solutions. And I thought that these were also challenges that were, or opportunities that we see in our community. The first resolution calls for the provincial government to support municipalities and regional districts to plan and create entities like housing authorities to provide and manage non-market housing in their communities. This is something that so many communities are exploring, but it's new for us, and we would benefit from some support to make those feasibility studies and implementations, if we choose to go forward with them, possible. So that's the first motion. The second motion relates to challenges that communities around the province are having with, what was that? Oh, one at a time?
No, go ahead, continue.
Okay. The extreme weather response shelter system resolution relates to, as I mentioned, challenges that communities around the province are having. So we had the same challenge here with security, and I think, you know, we voted to support the opening of an emergency weather shelter without security because of the likelihood that it would not open without or with that requirement. And there are many communities like in the Comox Valley where no emergency weather shelter systems were open, and a lot of that having to do with trying to attract and have appropriate facilities available and attract organizations to be able to run them. We had only one offer in town this year, and so this is a resolution that encourages or that requests the province to recognize that the current design of the program is insufficient to meet our current social challenges and the community capacity to meet those challenges. And then there's a couple of requests that we make of the province to make sure that we meet the needs of residents who are unhoused and dealing with extreme weather.
Thank you. Councillor Doudt.
I'll actually make the first motion, and that is that the Housing Authority feasibility study work resolution be forwarded to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, AVICC 2024 AGM and Convention for consideration.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida.
I'll speak to that if I can. So, this housing authorities are an interesting creature. Many of us around the table have talked to other municipalities, regional districts that have them. The Capital Regional District is one. The Village of Whistler is another. There are a lot of other places that are considering how to do that, but it basically has expenses and difficulties, and they have to match the needs of the local communities. So having this resolution to go to the province to provide some resources to make it possible to do that could put the resources we have to an effective use. And we've got one great resource locally that other people don't have, and that is municipal land. And that is a key to affordable housing everywhere. We have it and we can take advantage of it. So this motion would get us talking about this at the AVICC convention coming up very soon, and maybe go on to the UBCM, but maybe get the provincial government on our side with some funding so it doesn't fall on the municipalities to do it themselves.
Any additional discussion before we vote? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I can make the second resolution, Mayor.
Please, Councillor Isaacson.
I move that extreme weather response shelter system resolution be forwarded to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, AVICC 2024 AGM and Convention for consideration.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. 11.2 is the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities resolution. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. This is not the first time a similar resolution like this has come across our desk and gone to AVICC. And unless things change, it might be the same resolution again next year. But basically, for the last many, many years, the province has funded libraries across the province, but has not increased the funding that goes to libraries at any rate comparable to inflation. So the funding across the libraries has been the same. and inflation has gone up tremendously along with that. So the libraries continue to ask all of the city councils to follow the same process and to petition the province to at least get some equal funding to cover the constant growth and demand that's on libraries. So I will read the motion that the provincial core funding for public libraries resolutions be forwarded to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, AVICC 2024 AGM and Convention for consideration.
Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Yes, Councillor Southcott.
Yeah, I just have to add, I'm sure there's been at least half a dozen other initiatives like this that have gone by this stable, and really always we keep hoping that the province will buck up and see how valuable libraries are in our communities. And I'm really glad to see the organizations behind this this initiative, and which is now a coalition. It's great to see everybody working together. And I appreciate Councillor Almeida to bringing this to our table, and fight will never stop until the province gets it. Thank you.
And we now are going to go to questions. And I will ask Mr. Galinsky, do you have any questions?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a quick administrative question. With regard to the housing agreement bylaw, there were 4 in favor, and I saw Mayor Wasnow, Councillors Doubt and Isaacson voting in favor, and I don't know who the 4th one was. Oh, thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. That was my question, Your Worship. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from anybody in the audience tonight? Do we have any questions online? Councillor Almeida.
So motion to adjourn.
Seconded? Seconded. All in favor? Unanimously.
Good night, all.
I'd like to thank our audience for coming out tonight. It's so nice to see you here.